Ever since January 6th emerged, it has been characterized by a lot of things, one of which has been a series of lies that were told both by the government and by the media, all with the intention of making that day seem far more serious and menacing and dangerous than it actually was. One of the worst examples was the continuous, repetitive, and melodramatic claim that the people who went to protest that day took a fire extinguisher and bashed in the skull of a Capitol Hill police officer named Brian Sicknick to the point where they murdered him in a very gruesome way. And over for hours and hours throughout that day, one media outlet after the next continued to repeat that claim. It was their leading reason why this mob was a horde of murderous monsters. And it turned out to be a complete lie. Brian Sicknick went that night, called his mother, said he was fine, said he felt great, didn't even go to the hospital. He didn't die on January 6th, as they claimed over and over. In fact, no one died on January 6th except for 4 different pro-Trump supporters, 2 of whom dropped out of a heart attack, 1 from a speed overdose, and 1 Ashley Babbitt, who was killed by a Capitol Hill police officer who shot her at point-blank range. And so Brian Sicknick didn't die until the next day, and the coroner determined that he died of natural causes, not by having his skull bashed in with a fire extinguisher. And this is what you see in these events all the time, are all kinds of lies in order to scare people into believing that the event is much worse than it is, so that they become more submissive and more willing to give up power to the institutions of authority like the CIA and the FBI and the members of Congress who wanted to seize a lot of power in the name of fighting this scary insurrectionary movement. And one of the main stories that actually emerged that fueled this narrative was the claim that a domestic terrorist actually planted very dangerous pipe bombs, one at the Democratic National Committee headquarters, the other at the Republican National Committee headquarters, and one of which came very close to being able to threaten the physical safety of the Vice President-elect of the United States, Kamala Harris. Fast forward 2 years later, actually almost 3 years later, and we have no idea who this pipe bomber was. We're talking about one of the most surveilled areas in one of the most surveilled cities in all of the United States, Washington, D.C., near the Capitol, near all of the major centers of state power. And somehow the FBI has not been able to find who it is who supposedly planted these pipe bombs. Now, one of the journalists who has been, one of the very few who has been intrepid and aggressive about questioning a lot of these narratives and challenging them and proving with evidence that some of them is false, is our friend of the show, who's appeared many times to talk about his reporting along the way, Darren Beattie, who is a political scientist from Duke and a former Trump speechwriter and the founder of Revolver News, where he has done a lot of this reporting. And he has now obtained some evidence, some video evidence that came, I believe, from Thomas Massie in the Capitol that has helped him really break down a lot of the bizarre doubts about the narrative that emerged, specifically about this pipe bomber. We're always happy to have Darren on. He is always very thoughtful in everything he has to say, very measured in his words and in his claims. And we are always delighted to see him. Darren, great to see you. Thank you for coming on and talk to us about this.
Fantastic to be back. Thank you, Glenn.
Absolutely. So before we get into these specifics and this new evidence and kind of the questions that have been raised, you know, one of the things I always try and stress, because I've noticed this so often, is that so often when there's a event that can be used by the government to put the population into greater degrees of fear, there's always an attempt to kind of try and exaggerate how bad it actually was. Even if it is bad, there's always an attempt to kind of add scary claims about it. This was done with anthrax, and I think people have forgotten how crucial the anthrax attacks were to elevating the climate of fear after 9/11, to make people think that it's not just the World Trade Center and the Pentagon that can be attacked, but suburbanites in their own home through their mailbox, one of the kind of safest symbols of American safety, and the role that played in elevating fear. Just before we get into the details, talk about the importance of this claim about how these pipe bombs were laid and how that was used to create a narrative about January 6th.
Absolutely. There are a number of dimensions to this. And, you know, there are 2 major categories that we've covered extensively and really launched in the national conversation that I call the twin smoking guns of the Fedsurrection. One is the story of Ray Epps, which we've talked about in another context. And the other is the story of the pipe bomb, which we've covered extensively for almost 3 years now. Now, these pipe bombs, according to the FBI and according to surveillance footage presented to us from the FBI, incidentally, surveillance footage that comes from the DNC surveillance cameras, we'll get to that in a bit. According to this footage in the FBI, these pipe bombs were planted the evening before on January 6th. There's one pipe bomb that's called the RNC pipe bomb, but really the whole RNC DNC parallelism is something of a retroactive fiction. The pipe bomb that was first discovered but planted second behind a back alley, behind a trash can in a back alley near the Capitol Hill Club, that was planted around 8:30. And there's the second pipe bomb, the DNC pipe bomb, that was planted at approximately 8 p.m., according to the footage. Now, the surveillance footage presented to us by the FBI that comes via the DNC. Now, this latest bit of footage that you mentioned, and I think the footage itself is a good segue into the larger pipe bomb story, because no matter where you are in terms of your understanding of the overwhelming evidence that the pipe bomb situation is dirty and indeed some type of operation, the video itself that we're about to look at, simply as a self-contained matter, is explosive and scandalous no matter how you look at it. Even if you close your eyes and ears to the overwhelming evidence of federal involvement in January 6th, this video as a self-contained matter is pretty explosive, and I'd like to walk the audience through it if you guys have some clips on B-roll. Here we have an individual with a backpack approaching these two SUVs. We now know that individual is a plainclothes Capitol Police officer. He's informing the SUV here, the driver's side. This is a Metro PD SUV. He's informing the individuals in this car of the presence of a pipe bomb merely feet away. This isn't just an ordinary Metro PD car. This is part of a Secret Service detail, and the black SUV is Secret Service, but even the Metro PD car is part of the Secret Service detail. Here we see the person go to the black SUV. He's informing the individuals there, the detail, the Secret Service officers, the presence of a pipe bomb merely feet away, and ultimately the camera will pan to the benches where the pipe bomb is placed. Now, the first strange thing about this is, after being informed, this is Secret Service, after being informed of the presence of a pipe bomb merely feet away, it will take them over a minute to even bother getting out of their vehicles. At which point, they simply stand and lounge around in the most lackadaisical fashion imaginable. If viewers can see it here, or they can go to revolver.news and watch the video for yourselves and ask yourself, is this how I would imagine the Secret Service would respond?
Well, because also Darren, you like, while this whole thing is happening, you have people walking by, like just civilians walking very close to these cars.
Yes.
Yeah, no, and I just
Indeed,
like even in this first video where I'm sorry, and I should have asked this before, and I don't mean to interrupt your train of thought. I apologize, but are we only seeing these videos now, and where did they come from? How did we get access to these videos?
So there's a bunch of footage, obviously, from the Capitol Police. This security camera is a Capitol Police security camera. It was not released in the 70, 90 or so hours that the new speaker released, even though he promised 40,000. It kind of got lost in the whole like hoopla over the other Capitol videos. This was a specialized thing. This is something that Thomas Massey, as a result of extensive conversations and his deep familiarity with our research at revolver.news, he actually has taken an active interest in this pipe bomb question specifically, and he kind of heroically persisted with Kevin McCarthy directly, to the point that, you know, he had some leverage with Kevin McCarthy and basically used it on this. Kevin McCarthy was forced to pull teeth to get this video released. This is only 7 minutes, but I think without question, this is the most important January 6th video in existence. And it was sort of released very quietly, and it's been out for 4 months, but nobody's um, really told a story of how and why this is so significant. And this is what I've done recently. And, it's kind of everywhere because it's so self-evident once you see it that here you have a Secret Service detail being informed of the presence of an explosive device. There's a extraordinary lack of concern, not only for themselves, for their own lives, for the life of their protectee, who is then VP-elect Kamala Harris. And we'll get to that in a second. That's very significant. And most egregiously, as you point out, pedestrians walking by. In fact, the most flagrant example of this is another clip, which you guys may or may not have. It's fine if you don't, of a group of children actually crossing the street in the direction of this pipe bomb, walking within feet of the benches where the pipe bomb is placed. And the Secret Service agents are just standing there, not warning them, not a care in the world for these kids, for themselves, for Kamala. It's very clear that these Secret Service agents know that the pipe bomb is a dud, that it's inert, that it's fake, that it poses no danger. Then the obvious question is, how the hell do the Secret Service agents know that this bomb is a dud? An interesting additional detail.
Let's look at the second video. I think we have 3 clips. So if you could, are you able to see these on the screen as we're playing them?
I am.
Okay, good. So let's look at the second one and tell us what we're seeing here. This one is from 106.
Yeah, this is not going to be the children crossing. The children crossing is approximately 109, somewhere in the 109 area.
But I mean, still, the idea is by now they have been informed that there is supposedly a dangerous pipe bomb.
This is the part where they sit around in their vehicle for about a minute, as I mentioned. They sit around in their vehicle after being informed for almost a minute. Then they get out. Then there's about 2 minutes of them just lackadaisically standing around with no concern whatsoever. Then at approximately the 109-minute mark, that's when you see them allow a group of children across this very street that you're looking at. And at that point, the video does show the benches where the pipe bomb is actually placed. Then shortly after that, a Capitol Police officer walks right up to the pipe bomb, snaps a photo, gives a thumbs up signal, after which point the Secret Service detail, for the first time in the whole 7-minute video, actually hustle and get the hell out of Dodge. That's the first time in the whole video they scramble to get away. Now, and then the video expires. This is only 7 minutes. This is explosive 7 minutes. But I have sources who've seen a more extended version. And what happened shortly after that is kind of funny because they actually get a bomb-safe robot to come in and dismantle it. The very bomb that they were just lackadaisically standing around, that they're unconcerned of its danger it poses to Kamala Harris, the VP-elect, who they're supposed to be protecting, and then to this group of children, no concern. And yet somehow after they get that money shot from the Capitol Police officer who gives the thumbs up, then they progress to this spectacle of getting a bomb-safe robot to dismantle it. It doesn't make any sense. Again, it's very clear that they knew that the bomb posed no threat, but the obvious follow-up question is, how in the world would Kamala Harris's Secret Service detail know that this bomb was fake? Now, let me get to another thing that is so obvious.
Before we move on to that, first of all, let me just show this third clip we have, and people should go and watch all the clips on Revolver News. It's also on your Twitter feed. It went mega viral. What is this that we're seeing here, Darren? Is it just still more of them?
So we're at 107 here. So again, and the guy's still there. He hasn't left. This is the person. So here they are standing around lackadaisically. This is after they got out of their cars. So, I mean, again, I described it. This isn't particularly interesting. They're just standing around. Then at the 109 is the most egregious kind of flagrant example of their unconcern, because that's when you can see the children crossing. And then at around 110, you can see the Capitol Police officer snapping a photo. So again, I invite people, they can go to revolver.news and watch these clips. I think I've described them pretty well. But that's the footage. And as I pointed out, once the footage expires a little bit later, that's when they get the bomb-safe robot, which again doesn't make any sense. But let me get to an obvious and damning question.
Before we get there, let me say this. This is the thing that when I read what you had to say, and now that I'm listening to you further explain, is the question that I had, which is, so let's say it's possible that you were able to look at this bomb and just on sight kind of see that it's a joke, right? That it's not an actual serious threat, that it's not a real bomb that can possibly explode. Like, I imagine if I tried to create a pipe bomb, you would immediately look at it and know that there's no chance that it would detonate. But then the question becomes, why has this narrative lingered for so long that this is a serious pipe bomb? Why are there rewards out for it?
Glenn.
Yeah, go ahead.
Glenn, look, anybody who's ever dealt with the Secret Service whatsoever, they're not going to make an inference and say, oh, this kind of looks like it might be fake. That is a profound violation of protocol. If they find something that even remotely looks like, and these were convincing, whether or not they were actually operative is another question, but you can see photos of them, they don't look obviously fake. And even if they were obviously fake, it's still a flagrant violation of protocol. We're dealing with the Secret Service of the United States, tasked with protecting the VP-elect, the first woman of color VP-elect. Anybody who's dealt with the Secret Service knows that there is zero chance that, according to normal protocol, they would just see it and make a guess and say this kind of looks fake. So that needs to be ruled out. Entirely.
And again, I was just sort of making that devil's argument, but I'm just saying, that was like a defense of them. So, okay, we looked at this pipe bomb, we didn't really jump and get all excited because we knew it was fake. But then, why wasn't that part of the story from the beginning?
Look, let me point this other thing out, is that this is at 1:05. This is already after that first pipe bomb was discovered at 12:40 p.m. So another bomb had already been discovered, which is, also kind of bizarre. And I'd like to get to the full narrative of that. But let me jump to the first obvious and damning thing
I'm sorry to keep interrupting. We're gonna take all the time we need. But here, I just want to show you, we actually do have the video clip at 1:09. So since you've referenced it several times, I just want people to be able to see it. I think this is where the children are crossing, just so people can visualize what you've been describing. I think this is the clip that you were talking about, where there are people walking by.
Yeah, so the bomb is right by the foot of that further bench. And notice there's a cup of coffee that's open. It's a very windy day. So that cup of coffee, empty cup of coffee, is the mug, whatever it's called, that had not been there for a long time. Someone was sitting there very recently, and I'd love to know who. So here they all, look at how they stand around. The bomb is literally at those benches. They're within the blast radius, and they don't give a damn.
Okay, so go ahead. So go ahead with the rest of your analysis.
Keep going.
Yeah, I think it stopped there. Do we have this next?
Okay.
Do we have this? Yeah, no, I don't think we have the rest of that video. But
no, I think it's a lost cause, but it's fine because we've described it. And again, the full breakdown is on the piece at Revolver News. So now please let me get into the.
Go ahead. I promise I won't interrupt. Go ahead.
Okay, because it gets to what you were saying about how in every other domain, the regime is interested in amplifying and exaggerating to the point of absurdity the significance of January 6th in terms of it being a domestic terror event. I should have you know in your audience, the government officially considers pipe bombs to be weapons of mass destruction, by the way. So this is the most domestic terrorist element of the event that the media and the Democrats have spent considerable time and resources and energy in amplifying as a significant event of domestic terrorism. Kamala Harris is in the building at this time. The Secret Service agents who are utterly lackadaisical, who clearly know the bomb is fake, are part of Kamala Harris's Secret Service detail. Kamala Harris studiously covered up the fact that she was in the DNC building on that day. Studiously. In fact, she successfully covered it up for almost a year, after which point it was leaked. She's never even publicly acknowledged the fact that she was there. Now think about this, Glenn. Kamala Harris is one of the most politically opportunistic creatures on this planet. Why would she forego the opportunity to milk politically the fact that she came in within a hair's width of the January 6th pipe bomb, which, according to reports, had live explosives on it and had explosive material on it? Why would Joe Biden, for that matter, who thinks January 6th is sufficiently serious as to warrant an entire speech? And look, this guy can barely get out of bed. If he's going to give a speech for longer than an hour, it means it's important to him. He gave a speech on the third anniversary of January 6th for over an hour. And in this time, he neglected to mention that his own vice president nearly lost her life to the dangerous MAGA pipe bomb. That's very weird. And it makes us wonder how dark and how damning and how embarrassing does the truth have to be for these salivating political opportunists to leave that yummy bar of chocolate untouched on the table? You'd think that would be the most memorable and repeated talking points the whole January 6th, that Kamala Harris, the VP-elect, the first woman of color, so forth and so on, was actually in the building with the pipe bomb. Especially, as you pointed out, I'm glad you mentioned Brian Sicknick in the intro. Think of the great contortionist lengths they have to go to exaggerate this nonsense about Brian Sicknick and have that blow up in their face because it was utterly false, the story that he was bludgeoned to death by the MAGA mob. But here you have an actual case of the vice president being in the building with the bomb, and she doesn't mention it. Biden doesn't mention it. They actively cover that up.
So let me just probe that a little bit, because thanks for watching this clip from System Update, our live show that airs every Monday through Friday at 7 p.m. Eastern, exclusively on Rumble. You can catch the full nightly shows live or view the backlog of episodes for free on our Rumble page. You can also find full episodes the morning after they air across all major podcasting platforms, including Spotify and Apple. All the information you need is linked below. We hope to see you there.